Hi and good afternoon. My name is Chris Gleadle and I am the CEO of the Paddy Ashdown Forum, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. I'd just like to start, if I may, with just a few house rules just to help the event run smoothly. If everybody who's not talking, if you could please keep your microphones muted and keep your cameras off, that would be enormously helpful. And through the session, if you have questions to ask, do please ask them. But if you could use the Q&A section, that will help our moderator enormously. And just to remind you that this afternoon's event is being recorded and will be available after the event on the Paddy Ashdown website to view. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Robert Woodthorpe-Brown, who is the chair of the Paddy Ashdown Forum. Over to you, Robert.
My name, as Chris has said, is Robert Woodthorpe-Brown. I was a member of the Council of Chatham House, which celebrated its 100th birthday last week. I'm also a vice president of Liberal International, founded in 1947, which groups over 100 political parties and think tanks from around the world and foundations. And I had headed the international section of the UK Liberal Democrats for 14 years. Professionally, I'm a reinsurer, reasegurador in Spanish, and have a particular interest in agricultural insurance, enabling farmers to remain solvent after a meteorological or other disaster. I now chair the Paddy Ashdown Forum, created last year in memory of the late Liberal Democrat soldier, diplomat, statesman, and party leader. In his memory, we organize publications and events with a European and international flavor. He always said he was a citizen of the world. So are we. The Paddy Ashdown Forum is an associate member of the European Liberal Forum. Its director, Daniel Caddick, will now introduce the series of webinars to you. I also welcome Ricardo Gomez, president of the Red de Liberales de América Latina, RELIAL. And my thanks to Chris Gleadle, who is the CEO of Paddy Ashdown Forum, and to Pablo Elvedin of GPS for organizing this series. So over to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you very much, my dear friends, for joining us today, being at home or like me back in the office after such a long time. For those of you welcoming us at home, thank you very much for letting us in into your houses and being interested in the EU-Latin America relations today. As Robert has mentioned, my name is Daniel Caddick. I will not give you my CV, but I will tell you indeed that I am the executive director of the European Liberal Forum. And for those of you who don't know our organization, we are the political foundation and think tank of the ALDE party, the third largest political force in Europe. And as being connected to the ALDE party, and as the name suggests, we are the liberals. That means that we are the good guys. And it also means that we are the ones who actually have an interest in discussion on an eye-to-eye level with the other regions of this world. And looking at what has happened, especially last year, and with the EU-Mercosur trade agreement, and in the light of the EU Green Deal, we would like to look a little bit closer into the EU-Latin America relations and figure out how we can solve problems together, what we can do together better in the future for a joint future, how we can trade better together, but especially also how we can tackle challenges like climate change better. Obviously, as a lot of Latin American countries are at the forefront of food production, but maybe could be a tremendously important source for efficient agri-food systems that could supply the EU stronger in the future, and thereby increasing the efficiency of the trade route. Overall, we want to look into sustainability together. Sustainability for our planet, for our relations, but also for our economies. Because we as liberals obviously believe that only with good cooperation, with eye-to-eye level in trade relations, we can have a positive outlook in the future, and we indeed can reach net zero in trade relations together. I don't want to bother you too long because, as you might figure out, I'm not an expert in EU Latin America relations. I'm an expert in EU internal relation, and maybe also, as Robert knows very well, a little bit more Eastern facing. So I'm very glad that we now actually do something that we should have done a lot earlier. And from a European perspective, look west again, look southwest, and talk to our friends a little bit more stronger how we can do more together, and especially also talk about how we can increase the collaboration between European and Latin American liberals, and especially with our friends from Real. So thank you very much, dear friends, for joining us today, for cooperating today. And last word, thank you so much to the Paddy Ashton Forum for being such an active member of bringing these topics to the forefront and discussing these important issues and bringing them in the political forging system of Europe, which is here in Brussels. Thank you very much and have a very interesting webinar today.
Thank you very much, Daniel, lieber Freund. First person we would like to invite is the founder of the GPS initiative, my good friend Horacio Sanchez Caballero, whom I have known for several years now and have been following the development of this exciting operation and seminars that he has given in London or had given in London. But I think I would like him now to introduce the whole concept of it, which I personally find most exciting.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Chris. For us, it's really an honor to be invited to this activity organized by the Paddy Ashton Forum. My name is Horacio Sanchez Caballero. I am a general coordinator of GPS, group of producing countries from the Southern Cone. I'm going to present a PowerPoint, and this is the introduction. We are going to have 3 webinars, and the 3 issues we are going to tackle are here described: sustainable agriculture, climate change, and trade, a vision from the Mercosur countries. Next. Let me give you some information of the characteristics of the Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay Mercosur region, focus in those aspects which are very important for the agribusiness. Next. First of all, this Mercosur is the second territorial surface after Russia. I mean, it's a little bit bigger than Canada, US, China, and the European Union. Next. Some of the personal characteristics we do have in the region is that the Guarani is the second world sweetwater reserve. Next. And we have 2 very important biomes in the region, the Amazon one and the Gran Chaco one, both of which are very important for the sustainability of the natural resources in our planet. Next. Let's now have a very quick vision of which is the position of these 4 countries in relation with GDP. These are figures from 2018, I mean, before all the last turbulences appear. We, as Mercosur, are the 3% of the world GDP, 8.9% of the agri activity, and next. This is what caught my attention in 2012 when I started thinking about this. These 4 countries represent 30% of the net export of the food. And according to FAO and some other institutions, this will even be bigger in the future. So my first question, when I started to grasp this, is what a group of countries which represent 1/3 of total net food exporter could do. Next. In order to characterize a little bit more, let me tell which are the main food products in which Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay were leading exporters in 2018. So, next. Well, we have grain, wheat, soy, sesame, maize, peanuts, sugar, coffee, garlic, honey, soy oil, and sunflower oil. Next. Bovine, swine, poultry, meat, and milk. Next. Orange and lemon as fruits and as juice, pears, pineapple. Next. So more than 20 products in which the region is third or second food exported. This is just to focus which are the areas in which we are having a special position in the world trade of food. Next. So with this information, we started to work in 2012, trying to organize this, a network of private institutions from Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and experts in the agribusiness area, which seeks to contribute to the integration of the Southern Cone countries and their international projection. We are working in two different areas. As a think tank, having publications up to now nearly 50, which have the particular importance of focusing on very concrete proposals of action to go ahead. And as an action tank, we are regularly having national, regional, and international events in which we, like in this moment, expose and have a dialogue with other interest parties. Next. We develop our activities in these areas of development. Next. First of all, geopolitics of food, meaning which is the role of the main net exporters and main net importers in order to assure the quantity, quality, price, and sustainability of the food production and trade. Next. Second one is the regional integration in Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, especially because even if we speak about Mercosur, we do need to improve some of the links we do have among our countries in order to be able to work as a group, especially in very important situations as the one that opens the agreement with the European Union. Next. The other area in which we are working is agribusiness international development. Again, the importance of trade, but also about the investment. Investment is very important from third parties to our countries and for them to take the advantage of the characteristics of our conditions, and also for our countries to do some investments abroad. Next. The other area is the sustainable development for global food security, meaning which are the techniques we are using to produce the goods, taking care of the natural conditions. Next. So what's important and is in fact reflected in the 3 webinars we are going to have, that we work as a tripod. Agricultural practice, climate change, and trade for us is a group of issues that should be considered together, because the solution from one of them could be convenient or inconvenient for the other 2. So considering this as a net, it's very important to proceed with good academic information and record of the practices we produce. Next. Just to give you an idea, the institutions participating in Argentina are 18, in Brazil through ABAC, 150, including Getulio Vargas Foundation Agribusiness and Fiespi Agribusiness. In Paraguay, through the Unión de Gremios de la Producción, we do have 15 institutions, and in Uruguay, 12. These roughly represent 65% of the agribusiness power of our region. Next. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Horacio. That was a very good introduction, and I hope that will stimulate some questions later on. The first speaker that we have today is Marcelo Regunaga, former Secretary of the Agriculture of Argentina, current Academic Director of the Education and Training Program of the Buenos Aires Cereal Exchange, consultant to national and international organizations like UNDP, OAS, ECLAC, IICA, IEB, World Bank, IFAD, the European Commission, FAO, USAID, CIMMYT, and CIAT. In the Paddy Ashdown Forum, we have a rule that if you use an acronym, you will find $100. So I think that Marcelo owes us quite a lot of money. But Marcelo, could you please give us your presentation? Thank you very much indeed. Marcelo, you're muted. You're muted.
Well, excuse me. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, Robert, and the Paddy Ashdown Forum. I will speak about some of the questions that have been raised by Horacio Sanchez Caballero, particularly about, because we are going to have these 3 seminars. The first is on sustainability of the agricultural systems in the Mercosur countries or Southern Cone countries. And this is what we are going to see now. Are you going to, who is going to change the, well, what I want to raise at the very beginning is that the world has a big challenge today. And this is that at the same time we need to produce more food. This means that we need to have, as a world, a careful and integrated global approach, because we need to use in a conservative way the land, the water, and energy with production systems that are friendly with environment. And I want to raise that currently many relevant regions, the crop production is under intensive production systems, which are deteriorating natural resources and in addition contributing to global warming. The challenge is precisely to globally move to other kind of more sustainable production systems. And what I want to trace is in our case, the Southern Cone, we had this kind of intensive agriculture until the 80s. And since then we have been changing that systems moving to more sustainable production systems, in which we also already have a very good production potential based on these technologies, but also based in what we have as a business model that are very innovative. So right now, in the last 30 years, our southern corn countries are massively implementing technological innovations and increasing productivity with systems that we find that they are friendly with the environment, and this is what we call the sustainable intensification strategy. We can move. Next. I wanted to show two pictures that I took several years ago, one in our corn belt, and this is the no-till system that I will explain later, and you can find how we build the soil in the right of the picture, and how we cover and how we manage the soil. I took some photos when I went to Italy, and you can see there that these intensive systems use a lot of energy, and in addition to that, they destroy the soil. Actually, the soil is no more of a live soil, and this is what we need to change. Could we move to the next one? Next. Which are the basis tools for of this intensification strategy? One basis is the no-till planting. No-till planting allows to use lesser amounts of fuel fossils. We use much more efficiently rainfall. This means that we don't need irrigation. In addition to that, we improve the soil. In FAO, they mention this as sustainable soil management that increase the organic soil, the carbon in soil. And this means that we are sequestrating carbon. So we don't need to use massive fertilization, but we just need precision soil nutrition. In addition to the no-till planting, a second complementary technology are crop rotations, or annual crop rotations, cover crops, inter the two other crops, and grassland farming when we are producing also beef. And this means, again, an improvement structural and biological of the soil, allowing the low use of fossil fertilizers. And in addition, that is very important, it used to be very important many years ago in our regions, is the reduction of erosion and improve of the use of rainfall. Then we have the integrated pest control that is based on biotech innovations. We are using seeds with resistance to herbicides, to insects, and to other diseases. And we are using also new chemical molecules. And this means lower use of agrochemicals, in many cases, very important to human health of workers, and in addition, reduction in gas emissions. In addition to that, we are moving every day to more precision agriculture for more efficient use of different inputs like seed fertilizers in different parts of the lots. And in general, we are moving to bioeconomy developments, including the production and local use of biofuels and bioenergies replacing fossil fuels, the new circular approaches to generate bioproducts and bioenergy with residues and waste. The next. Just to mention how we are massively adopting these kind of practices, in the case of Argentina, you can see there that very rapidly we move from the traditional system to this no-till planting. It is used in more than 90% of the main annual crops of our country. It's interesting to highlight that when we look all over the world, less than 10% of total work crop production is under no-till soil management. And we find that this is something that we need to change because of all the other impacts that I mentioned before. The next one, please. What I wanted to highlight here is that besides that we have been moving to a more conservative strategy in terms of the technology that we are adopting, we are increasing our yields. So it's possible to increase production with adopting conservation technologies. And you can see there in both in soybean and maize, for the 4 countries of Mercosur, how we have been growing in our yields. This means that we can have at the same time conservation technologies and improving productivity. Next, please. Well, having said that, what we find, as Horacio mentioned before, is that the southern countries can contribute in the future to food security and at the same time to global environmental sustainability. We have abundant natural resources endowment and a proven sustainable production system to increase local food production. In the down part, you find there some studies conducted by FAO and other international organizations showing that Latin America has still some additional land that could be put in use, and we are endowed with one of the highest level of per capita renewable water resources. This means that we have the natural resources, but in addition to that, we have the production system that is validated. So we can find that in most of the specialized organizations, projections show that our countries will increase our share in net food exports during next decades. In addition to that, what we find is that our region has a valuable experience on some sustainable intensification strategies that could be an interesting alternative to replace other production systems that are deteriorating natural resources and contributing excessively to global farming. Next one. What are the main initiatives that we are managing today in our region? First, we are conducting and we are creating networks to promote good agricultural practices. And there are several promotion initiatives in some countries of the region and some provinces of the region. There are incentives for the use of good agricultural practice. In addition to that, we have been passing in the 4 countries regulations on natural forest conservation and selected good of agricultural practices. In addition to that, we have been conducting biotechnology strategies, but based on biosafety and bioeconomy regulations and incentives. I designed the biosafety system when I was secretary 30 years ago in Argentina, and I find that our biosafety systems are quite good and very keen about the risk that we have on these kind of technologies. Now we are working on low carbon or zero carbon certification programs. And in addition, what we are doing as GPS is the same as some public agencies, trying to have an agenda to promote all these kind of issues. That means that we want to cooperate in terms of what we can help other regions to introduce this kind of intensification systems, and in addition to promote a better trade system to improve the global picture as mentioned before. And the last one? Well, the final remarks that I wanted to highlight is we have a big challenge today. That is that at the same time we need to deal with food security, with climate change, and with natural resources sustainability, all at the same time. And this is crucial for the future. It's actually crucial today. And as I mentioned, many systems, production systems around the world have negative impacts on climate change and natural resources. However, in our case, we changed the system 30 years ago, and we have this new strategy that we call the production intensification strategy, allowing increased production and at the same time environmental sustainability. We find, as I mentioned, that this kind of strategy could be an interesting alternative to replace in other regions production systems that are not friendly with the environment. Because we learn about other alternatives like the strategy also in the Green Deal about organic food. This kind of strategy do not guarantee global food supply, but we find that the intensification strategy that we are using could be an alternative interesting to use in other regions of the world. Besides that, we find that regional production and consumption will have today and will have in the future imbalances. This situation will continue. And this means that we need more trade. However, trade is seriously limited by non-science-based trade barriers. For that reason, and in the next webinars, we will touch more in detail this kind of issue, we find that the smooth world food trading system should be a major objective aimed at facilitating at the same time food security and natural resources sustainability and mitigating global warming, balancing the need of regions that are not self-sufficient and the alternative to use production coming from other regions. Thank you for the presentation.
Don Marcelo, thank you very much indeed. That was fascinating. And a lot of what you said should be taught in the agricultural colleges, not only of Europe, but the world, because it is a complete game changer. And because it's so far away from Europe, people choose to ignore it. And doubtless there are economic interests stopping it. But that was fascinating. And I'm sure it will, a lot of Europeans will be very interested to hear this. For everybody's
Robert, excuse me. I find that the problem here is not only Europe, Asia. Asia is using, is destroying the water and the soil. But we can discuss this later. Thank you. Bye.
Well, my own experience is Saudi Arabia, where they tried to grow wheat in large circular fields, bringing up fossil water, which is now run out. It is criminal what they have done to the planet. Anyway, just for everybody's benefit, this is being recorded and there will be a version of it on the Paddy Ashdown Forum website, and that will be, we will send out to people who are registered and not attended yet, or at all. We will be sending it out to them, and also to Liberal International, ELF, and everybody else, to make sure that they have got a recording of this webinar so they can learn, and the future ones, of course, so that they can learn from it. Can we move now to Michael Carroll? Now, Michael was a former World Bank official from 1992 to 2012. He's currently a consultant to the World Bank, the FAO, IFAD, IICA, and CIAT, among others. And he's a member of the regional board of the Grassland Alliance. And I look forward to what you have to say. And could you possibly mute yourself, Don Marcelo? Thank you.
Well, good morning to all. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and a privilege to be able to represent the Uruguayan chapter of GPS. As you have seen, Marcelo has given a fantastic overview of what we feel from GPS. So what we decided is to try and illustrate a little bit more what was presented by showing you the Uruguay case, which is very, very close to what the other countries in our group are trying to achieve. So this is a little bit more graphic than conceptual, but I think it's a good complement. So if we can move on to the first one. As I'm sure you all know Uruguay because of how good we are at football. And you may know something about how good we are at eating barbecues and lots of beef, and our tourism. Lately, I think we're also gained some reputation on how we've handled the pandemic, which we're very proud of. And hopefully at the end of this presentation, we'll be able to add agriculture as one of our 5 features that make us famous in the world. So we're a small country, and that helps us a lot for many reasons. I think our overall size is about the size of England and Wales together. So we're 4 times bigger than Netherlands, so we're not that bad. But our size helps us to function in a way in which larger countries, our neighboring countries, maybe have more difficulty. We all know each other here, and I've only lived here for 10 years, but I'm becoming an adopted charrua, and I know quite a lot about how we function as a country and how agriculture works. So we're about 16 million hectares, of which are owned. 100% of the land in Uruguay is private, and it's owned by 41,000 farmers, of which about 60% are smallholders and 40% are commercial farmers. We have commercial farmers here, smallholders here have been identified. We've used the term family farming rather than the smallholder, and that is a legal definition that has all the details. You have to live on the farm or not further away from a certain distance, not hire labor, etc. And that category of family farmers is a legal category that is used for certain tax breaks and assistance and technical assistance, etc. So that's the way our farm system is currently functioning or existing. Next. Basically, we have, as you can see, the middle strip of the country is all the green, which is all our livestock area, which is a predominant area of over 40%. Our crop area is more towards what we call the west coast, where we have the concentration of cropping, the better soils, of course. We have in the north and the east, we have rice, and as an increasing industry, forestry plantations for paper mills, European industries that are establishing here in Uruguay and increasing the area planted to basically eucalyptus. Dairy is a small area, but a very important activity in the country, and it shows in exports. And we have about 2% of intensive crops. Next. Well, this is a bit cumbersome fact sheet, but it's just to show you a little bit. Our agriculture contributes 70%, 7% to our GDP, which is a little bit lower than what the Southern Cone contributes, which is 9.4. I think Horacio had mentioned that. We export about 7 billion US dollars of agricultural exports, and we import about over 600 million in inputs. We don't, because of the size, we don't produce that much in terms of input, so we import quite a lot. I won't go into much detail here because we're not supposed to preempt the next presentation, which will be on trade. So we leave all the trade details for later. We are 3.3 million, I think it's 3.5 now, which means that we produce to feed ourselves, but we still have a surplus for about 40 million people in the planet. So that definitely makes us a very, very export-oriented country. And hopefully we can further increase that amount. We have significant amount of population that work out of the primary sector, 245,000 people, and then the 60-40 that we were talking about. In terms of land use, it's similar to what we were showing in the map. So I think we can move on. So our most relevant features that we would like to kind of show you, and I think this picture is a very interesting one of our ecosystems that is called the Palmares. We have a very strong agro-environmental approach. We've been very strong on taking care of natural resources. As we intensify agriculture, in the last 30 years, we've been increasing the area of agriculture, but always with a very strong concern on protecting natural resources, which is reflected both in public policies and the producer consciousness and behavior. This is achieved with well-coordinated public and private institutions, including good connections between the Ministry of, in our case, our ministry is called Livestock and Agriculture, reflecting that livestock is more important than agriculture, but with the Ministry of Environment, there's a very good coordination, which allows for good environmental oversight, licensing, and protecting particularly water resources, and including the Guarani aquifer that Horacio was referring to. We have a unique biodiversity in the country, which is basically the grasslands, which are the predominant biome, and I would say the third biome, that important biome in the region other than the Amazon and the Chaco. And this is not a small detail, because it is the biome that feeds all our cattle. So it's a productive biome as compared to the Amazon and the Chaco that have more environmental fragility issues. And we are very strong on the soil side. I think we're the first country in Latin America that has produced a soil map in the 60s, and that has generated a category of soils that's even used today for marketing of land. All land is categorized based on an indexed that was developed together with the soil maps, that has been very, very useful to understand the suitability of soil for different activities, which has been very actively used, particularly to identify forest areas. Next. So our production system, and very similar to what Marcelo was mentioning, is based on two main pillars, which is being competitive, because being small, we can be expensive, our cost can be high, so we have to be competitive. We have to continuously be innovating, but we have to keep in mind sustainability and the protection of natural resources. So I can elaborate a little bit more on these, each on the agriculture and the livestock side. Next. So on the agricultural side, our competitiveness is, we feel it's very much because we are rain-fed, we function on basically rain-fed production. We have a very small area of irrigation, which is growing, but it's still very small as compared to our 1,000,000 hectares of soybean and maize and winter crops that are all rain-fed. Similar to what Marcelo was showing, zero tillage is a predominant activity. We're over 90%, and probably the small area that's not under zero tillage is basically very small holders or horticultural crops, but there's very little area. Growing use of precision agriculture, which is allowing to reduce the use of chemicals and a better, more optimal use of fertilizers. We are working strongly on reducing vulnerability to climate variability. Here we don't ignore climate change. We'll definitely be discussing this in the third webinar, but we are much more concerned with climate variability, which is our annual variations, and how can we make our production systems better prepared to resist the climatic changes year by year. We do have a very strong climate crop insurance system, which is widespread for horticulture, citrus, most extensive crops, and even forest plantations against fires and other types. So there is a good safety net for production with regards to particular climate events. And we do have NRM focused support programs for family farmers. They're not just direct subsidies, but it is assistance for the family farmers, as I was mentioning at the beginning, for particularly investments with regards to improved use of water and soil. Next. On the livestock side, we've had a very important event in the early 2001. We had a very major foot and mouth disease outbreak, which completely changed the way we do things ever since. Today, since 2001, we've never had an outbreak, and we are certified by OIE as FMD free. And we do have what we consider one of our main features on the livestock side, which is this traceability system that we have developed, that was originally designed with a sanitary objective, which was the next time we have an outbreak, let's make sure that we know exactly where the sick animals are, so we can quarantine those farms. We've never had to use the system, but in the meantime, it has gradually developed into a system which allows us to know exactly what cattle we have, where it is, how do we focus if there is a drought, and the whole tracking system. Anybody that buys Uruguayan beef can identify which farm it comes from, and all the information. Each animal is mandatory to have a chip installed after birth, and all the information is put into that system and recorded and reported to a semi-public, public-private system that keeps all the information provided individually by farmers into the system. It is one of our very interesting features. We have received a lot of support from World Bank for its establishment, and today Uruguay presents the tracking system in many international events, and it's been used a lot for even for commercial opening of markets, etc. We're developing group traceability for sheep and poultry. Our genetic breeds, fortunately, most have come from UK, so we're very proud of our Hereford and an Angus, so that gives us the quality that we have. And we are still very much on the grass-fed system. As you can see, this a field day that we've had not long ago. This picture is actually from southern Brazil, so it shows that we are looking after a biome together, all four countries. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But we are, I think, of our total slaughter, I think 85% continues to be in Uruguay, continues to be from grass-fed systems, not feedlots, which is for us a very, very important element that we need to further promote and expand in terms of market entries and as different products. And because of that, we are in full compliance with both our Hilton and 481 quotas, and we hope to stay on track with the new trade with regards to our beef. Next, we in other than the slaughtering that we were mentioning, in recent years we've become quite active also in the live exports of young animals, particularly to Turkey, which have been buying considerable amounts of live animals from us. On the sustainability side, which is where we really put a lot of efforts, so in addition to all the high tech that we use, sustainability is not only the zero tillage, but we have adopted, and this is another Uruguayan feature that we're very proud of, the soil use plans have been adopted at the farm level in the last few years. It's been highlighted by FAO as one model system in which farmers present their annual plans, and based on slope and soil conditions, the plan is adjusted or revised to make sure there's minimized erosion and recovery or maintenance of organic matter. So as a result, one of the issues that the system has tried to avoid is a monoculture of soybeans. So now normally we're rotating crops, as Marcelo was mentioning, using maize, corn, or sorghum every few years to make sure that we can get some organic matter back into the soil. We've also developed some climate-based information systems, which allows exactly farmers to understand better how to deal with dry month we normally have in summer. And this has become very useful both for extension, for research, and for decision-making at the farm level. And another important feature for us is that we have developed this national public-private system that allows for the mandatory collection and recycling of chemical containers, which we do as part of a plan to improve the use of agrochemicals, and something very important, which is the oil sprayers in the country now have to have a GPS installed, and they're monitored by satellite to avoid spraying close to rivers, water bodies, urban areas, rural schools, etc. Next, that's our responsible production model that we were talking about. On the livestock side, sustainability, this again, going back, looking at it more from the resource side, we're predominantly using native grasslands, which is, I would add to Horacio's comment, our third biome, and which feeds a lot of our cattle. And we're basically, it's a very extensive system, which is good in many aspects, but it requires improvements in productivity and particularly the differentiation of products. And that is to some extent why this Grasslands Alliance was created a few years ago, which is an initiative sponsored originally by BirdLife International, thinking of the grasslands as a habitat of birds in different levels of threat and vulnerability. And today this initiative is in all 4 Mercosur countries, southern Brazil, whole of Uruguay, good part of northern Argentina, and Paraguay, and it includes a good partnership between biologists, technicians, and about 600 to 700 farmers that gives us a very good protection of grasslands in over almost 500,000 hectares, of which we are very proud to consider that to some extent each of them are a park warden. They're taking care a park without costing anything to the government. And in the meantime, they're also producing and hopefully selling their products with some kind of special seal to identify that it's by producing beef, they're protecting biodiversity, both flora and fauna. We're also very keen on developing rain harvesting structures to increase the efficiency of water resources. We have what we call tajamares, which are basically constructions, little small dams that we built in watersheds to allow the capture of rainwater. And this has become a very, very useful tool for efficient use of water, better distribution of cattle on farms, and particularly be better prepared for the summer drought periods or dry periods we normally have. And in the dairy industry, we've worked a lot for even commercial reasons and sanitary reasons, a lot on manure management systems, which include recently the gradual and slow expansion of biodigesters for generation of electricity. Next. Well, we did a little analysis of how climate smart we were because of the whole concept of climate smart agriculture. And we identified through some international consultancies that we are on a good track in most of the activities in terms of the number of practices that we have for horticulture, for rice, for rain-fed agriculture, and for livestock. We have quite a number of certified climate smart agriculture practices, some of which I've already mentioned in the previous slides. Next. So, but we have to go for more. We have to stay competitive. We have to stay as advanced as we can in technology, and definitely for that, hopefully this will generate some level of cooperation and both for the business side, for the trade, and for the technology side with you guys, the European Union, the green trade, etc. We want to do a lot in terms of bioeconomy, developing bioeconomy seriously. There is already a national strategy for developing bioeconomy, green economy, circular economy. We want to work more and more on differentiating our products, although we can feed 40 million people, but still compared to our neighbors, north and south, we are small, so our product has to be more on the quality than the volume side. And we have to be as responsive as we can to market demands. That meaning today, the Mercosur trade agreement is definitely one of our focuses. We are starting to work a lot on this new administration, which is coming in with very, very good ideas and policies. We're getting into seriously addressing animal welfare issues. And last but not least, from our precision agriculture, we definitely think we have to start moving into digital agriculture, which is going to help us improve productivity and without increasing cost. So this is it. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this has been informative and useful.
Michael, thank you very much indeed for that. Muchas gracias, as it says. You missed out one thing. When I had a brief trip to Uruguay last year, my first, I was so impressed. I understood why plenty of Europeans were migrating there. And with what was going on in Brexit in my country, you may find a few Brits wanted to come down as well, including me. What I was particularly interested in was also your housing policies. This is nothing to do with today's debate, but I made a lot of notes about the clever housing policies for middle classes and for lower classes, and exactly the collaborative efforts that went into it. I was mightily impressed, and you come from you're in a wonderful country at present. So, and there's another story just to upset the Argentinians. I was given I was served by a catering company, a bottle of Uruguayan Malbec, which is horribly expensive in England, but it was the best Malbec I have ever drunk. When I went to Uruguay, I couldn't find it anywhere. But anyway, so thank you very much for that. I've got a couple of questions to start off. I haven't noticed any questions coming up on the board. If I'm wrong, then I'm sure that Chris will correct me. But firstly, on the food standards, it is quite clear you're doing an enormous amount, given the Mercosur agreement and given the fact that Europeans tend to protect their farmers all the time. Are you having food standards checks that meet European standards? We notice, for example, in England, we're talking about getting stuff in from America. So you've got hormones in the beef, you've got chlorine in the chicken. Clearly, you don't have it in your area at all. So food standards which would make the European consumer happy and our regulators happy. I guess that you have thought all of that through. Could you just confirm it? Marcelo, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Robert. Yes. We are working in, first of all, we have been exporting beef to Europe for many years, following what the European Union has been requesting for our Hilton quota or the other quotas with no hormones and all these kind of certifications. But in addition to that, now it's not the sanitary issue, the issue that we are taking in account, but also the environment issue. I mentioned that we are in the process of developing a certification system for low carbon or zero carbon. And this is in Argentina, we have in process this during this year with all this pandemia. We have some delays, but we were planning to have by the end of the year some kind of agreement on how we are going to certificate low carbon or zero carbon for different value chains. We are working on that, on different value chains, and definitely one is oilseeds or cereals, another one is beef. So I think we can definitely comply with the European demands, but in addition to that, instead of being just reacting, what we are trying to do right now is to be proactive, trying to show that, because we are working also trying to show that our production systems include carbon sequestration in the case of livestock production, that this is not the case when you have intensive livestock production. So we are working in a system in which we are using our own information and our own production systems to show that we have more friendly with environment production systems. In addition to that, we find that after all these new sanitary issues, we are going to need, and actually this is something that we are doing right now, is that we need to revise what we are doing in our sanitary systems. And we are working, and actually this week, we had a webinar also with the people of the Inter-American Cooperation Organization, and particularly with the Southern Cone countries, trying to see how we can improve our sanitary regional system. I don't know if Robert, if Michael wants to add something to that.
I think Marcelo's comment is exactly what we're all after. I think what we can say is, and picking up on what you were mentioning, Robert, is that by definition, our production systems are pretty close to being environmentally sustainable. We're really after that. We sometimes have to work a little bit on, for example, the chemicals used for ticks. Some farmer gets a little bit carried away, but in general, our whole system is really very much oriented towards having sustainable and environmentally friendly products. We have, I think, our beef with our seal, the Alianza Grasslands Alliance seal. Today, we're selling beef in Dutch supermarkets, and with a special bonus price because it is protecting biodiversity, and we hope to be moving more and more into that. There's one initiative that's also in its very early stages, but we are trying to move into non-transgenic soybeans, for example, for human consumption. Those are the kinds of sort of niche products that we're working on, but the whole concept, the whole system is really aimed at environmentally friendly and sustainability.
Thank you. I think Horacio wanted to come in here. Horacio, would you?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Following to what Marcelo said and Michael said, we had this week a meeting with COSAVE, Consejo de Sanidad Vegetal, Sanitary Vegetable Institution, which is within the IICA, el Instituto de Investigación Americano, which is the full America. It includes North America. And they were very, very interested in following our activities related to rules and regulations on how to combat insects, fungus, and pesticides. And on top of that, we are developing now a program which is Alimentos Sanos, healthy food. And this means that we are implementing a system by which from the farm to the vessels, we can certify that the food is healthy, okay? Especially now, because with the pandemic, many countries are asking for more and more protocols. Some of them are clear and, let's say, scientific based, but other ones are a little bit exaggerated. And I suspect that some of them are more linked to trade interests and how to block the possibility from our countries to export.
Thanks very much. My next question was going to be that about what sort of farming is involved. Certainly, Michael's answered that question fully when it gave us statistical information as regards Uruguay. But I mean, to what extent in the other countries is there what is the mixture between latifundismo, or big commercial farms, and small farmers? And to what extent do cooperatives exist?
Well, I will speak about the rest of the countries. And also Uruguay, but we have what we call familial farms are for us small farms, but for the rest of the world are large farms. This means that in most of our countries we have a very important percentage of total farms that are family farms, and a high percentage of these family farms are working with co-ops. The co-op movement in Argentina is very strong, the same as in Brazil and also in Paraguay. For instance, we have a large co-op that is called ACA, Argentine co-ops. They manage production in livestock, crop production, they manage ports, they produce, they crush, they export. So we have a very strong co-op movement in Argentina. The same is in Brazil. Brazil has been supporting, and the former Minister Roberto Rodriguez, which is part of our GPS group, has been pushing very much for the co-ops in Brazil, and they also have very strong, and in Paraguay is the same. So I would say these are, in terms of other regions, These are medium to large farms that in our case, we call them family farms, but because of the size. But you see, we have large farms in Argentina and in Brazil and also in Paraguay. But I would say that, and you can remind what I showed with the adoption. Modern technologies are adopted by all farms. When we mention that 90% of the land, the cropland are in no-till, this means that all sizes of farms are adopting technology. There is no discrimination in terms of small farms, or because medium farms are integrated with co-ops that are selling inputs, the good inputs, and they sell their products to the up to exporters. So we don't have a big difference between family farms and large farms.
Thank you very much for that. And my final question, before I come on to anybody else, is, as I said earlier, I've been involved in the insurance business, and especially in the agricultural insurance business, not in Latin America. And UNCTAD was very, very keen on this. Now, in Don Marcelo's presentation, it came out strongly that insurance is a major factor in the agricultural economy of Argentina. I just wondered to what extent our farmers help to stay in business after natural catastrophes by insurance, be it voluntary or obligatory in other countries.
Actually, well, Uruguay has a very good insurance system, and since they have better stability, because inflation is not good for insurance system in Argentina, but we have a widespread system for frozen, and we don't have, like in the US, a program that provides subsidies to reduce the costs. That means that we don't have a massive insurance system. What we have is more for frozen, heladas is freeze?
Frost.
And frost. But I would say that most of the farms that are managed or receiving credit are using this kind of insurance. But we don't have a massive insurance system because the cost of insurance in Argentina is high. I think the inflation problem that we have in the country is much bigger than in Uruguay or Brazil, where they can use more massively the insurance system. I don't know if you, Michael, want to add something from Uruguay.
Yes, well, yeah, you're right. Our insurance system is pretty advanced and stable, I think, compared to the other countries. Francisco Lezama, who is part of our GPS, is our guru. He knows everything about insurance, and he was telling me that we have 4 big companies, very well established in the country, providing insurance, and insurance goes all the climatic coverage, and we're almost involved in all areas of cereal production, oilseeds, horticulture, fruits, and even forestry for fires. So there is a pretty mature insurance system, and in some cases we've been trying to do a little bit more sophisticated, like using green index to identify, for livestock particularly, to think in terms not of death or life, but reduced performance because of climatic events. That hasn't advanced that much. It's difficult, but the conventional insurance system are all very well structured and in place, and farmers use it as a normal production tool.
Great. Well, obviously it puts a smile on my face, though I have no shareholding in any of those companies, I hasten to add to you.
In addition to that, Robert, we have received last year a special program from the World Bank to trying to promote the insurance system, because most of the subsidies that we provide from the public budget is for emergency cases, but not for subsidies, for insurance. And now we are developing this new program with the World Bank to analyze to what extent we can move to more modern insurance systems. Robert, there is a question that has been sent by the questions. Do you want me to answer?
Very much so. Please, would you go ahead?
There is a question mentioning to what extent the COVID is going to limit our capacity to move into the good agricultural practices. I think that, well, there are some questions that the COVID is affecting all the economy, but I won't say that this is going to be affecting too much what we are doing in relation to that. Actually, for instance, the province of Córdoba launched yesterday the 4th program in which they have a special program that they provide some small subsidies and they promote the good agricultural practices in the country, in the province of Córdoba. And they launched this yesterday using, instead of the presential system, just the internet system. But I won't say that most of agriculture in Argentina has been working almost as before the COVID. We had some problem in the transportation system, but in general, the production system has not been affected too much. There are some limits in some intensive activities in which the concentration could be a limit, but most of agriculture has been working very good, and actually we haven't had any kind of problems also in the sanitary issue. For instance, in the certification of the quality of food, of beef, we didn't have any kind of problems. So I don't think that the COVID is limiting our strategy in terms of better certification or good agricultural practices.
Robert, I would complement to that that information provided by Marcelo. Clearly, we say el campo no para. Basically, the rural areas basically probably don't even know what COVID is all about. We have some little spots here and there, but the farmer continues to live a much more normal life than us in the cities. We don't think production has been affected in any way. And our extension and research system has been very, very proactive and very rapidly developed systems for Zooms and other types of virtual communication. We continue to be very much actively involved, but as Marcelo mentioned, where we have had some issues has been on the processing side. Some little spots with cases in processing plants, dairy processing, slaughterhouses, but even that has been very small. And the reduction in terms of beef slaughtering, I think we were looking at statistics during these 3 months compared to the previous, the same month of 2019 has been a reduction of about 20%. So although some of our containers are still waiting to get into China, in general, the situation has not affected the trade as much as it's affected human lives.
You mentioned China. This one last point from me would be that I have read at the time that the Chinese obviously trying to source soybeans without having to go to the United States the whole time to feed their huge swine industry, and that they were trying to buy land in the Cono del Sur countries and were told, we will sell you the produce, we will not sell you the land. Is this true? Is this a myth or is it true? It's true.
Well, actually, many of our countries have been trying to limit their investment in land. In Argentina, there was a very big project, and there was a reaction, local reaction. Actually, they have very, very little land acquisitions. What we have in Argentina, very strong, is that they purchase some crushing and some ports. That means that, for instance, we used to have an Idea, which originally was from a Dutch company, and they purchased that company, the same as other that is called Noble. So they have a big crushing plants in the ports, and they are exporting from their own, and this is part of this large operation that they have. The largest Chinese company, the food company, I forgot the name now, but is the largest company there.
COFCO,
so I think COFCO. I think they find, and we are working comfortable exporting to these kind of companies from our international or local companies. In many of our countries, we have the international companies like Dreyfus or Cargill, but we also have the co-ops, as I mentioned, ACA, or in Brazil the same, and local firms that, for instance, Aceitera General Dehesa, which is a local firm that operates in the ports and has similar capacities to Dreyfus or Cargill. So I think there is a network that has been developed in which we are exporting to them most of our products processed in Argentina by local companies. And this is the same for Brazil. And actually, what happened recently is that China resumed their economic situation in last months, and the US took some advantage from that. Then Brazil took the advantage, and currently we are exporting some beef and some soybeans from Argentina. So we find that this COVID has been affecting all the global system, but at the end of the day, many of these countries are resuming their economies, and they still need to import beef or other products, particularly in the case of China. They still have the pork issue. We don't have too much pork for export. Brazil, yes, but we don't have. But there has been some substitution of pork with beef also.
Thank you very much. I think that we have probably gone as far as we should today on our very first webinar. For those who are listening and who are not already aware, the next one will be at the same time, entitled Climate Change, Agriculture and Mitigation Policies in the Southern Cone. And the speakers will be Martin Fraguillo, who's Professor of Agribusiness and Bioenergy at the University of San Andres, and Marcelo Brito, the President of the Brazilian Agricultural Business Association. It will be moderated by Julia Stanger, who will be one of the speakers later on in our series. I believe she's online today. Julia belongs to a company, an organization called Climate Earth, which are lawyers who specialize in making sure that that forestry is developed, forestry is not pulled down, and that people do not break the law while trying to do it. I'm sure that all panelists will be, all, not just the panelists, but all the people who are involved today and in future will be given the signing in details by Chris for next time. I'd like to thank Chris again for being my aide, as it were, in this, or the boss, really, I'm not quite sure. But I'm very grateful to our speakers and to Horacio for introducing everything. This is a brilliant beginning to this series. It is absolutely fascinating, and there is so much Europe can learn, and frankly, North America can learn from what you guys are up to. So thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who attended for giving up your time today. This is being recorded. It will be available on the Paddy Ashdown Forum website, and the details of the website Chris will be sending to everybody. So many thanks indeed. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.